cages are broken.
Let's take a look at Matt Mercer's cold-blooded class for D&D. Set apart from all other D&D 5e classes, the Blood Hunter stands alone as the only homebrew third-party option that's considered fair game at most tables and is even fully integrated on DNDBeyond. Despite what you may think of Critical Role and Matt Mercer, they've done very well in the departments of flavor and mechanical intrigue when it comes to their homebrew, even if the game balance sometimes gets thrown out of the window. I personally have a deep respect for Matt and all the CR content, but you'll still want to double check with your DM to make sure that playing this class at their table is alright. Given how badass they are, I wouldn't foresee any problems there, but maybe they're allergic to blood. Thematically, blood hunters tend to be what happens when a warlock and a fighter have a baby.
I'm home.
But maybe a ranger was the milkman.
What the
What I mean is that they usually leverage some dark ability in order to engage in physical combat more effectively as they fight against evil, like fighting fire with fire. More than anything, they're characterized by their unique Hemocraft blood magic, but we'll get to that later. First, you should be aware that blood hunters rely heavily on either their strength or dexterity, depending on what kind of weapon you'd like to use. You also get to choose if they rely on intelligence or wisdom when it comes to their more mystical abilities, though you'll probably want a pretty decent constitution score as well, since activating some of these abilities will cost you some hit points. Your other stats are pretty free game from there, so you'll want to try to choose a race option like Githyanki, Human, High Elf, or even Goliath, depending on your priorities. Really, there are tons of flavorful options that can work well, especially with this class. Then, at level 1, you'll get a sizable D10 hit die, proficiency in light and medium armor, shields, simple and martial weapons, alchemist supplies, dexterity and intelligence saving throws, and any 3 skills from acrobatics, arcana, athletics, history, insight, investigation, religion, and survival. Then you'll gain advantage on survival and intelligence checks made to track fae, fiends, and undead, and recall information about them, along with your all-important Blood Maledict feature that you can use once per short rest for now. This ability can curse the creatures you fight with specific effects depending on what curses you choose for your character. You can only choose one from a list of 12 for now, and it's important to note that this won't work on creatures that don't have blood. Even more importantly, you can power up these curses by intentionally taking necrotic damage equal to a roll of your Hemocraft die. Though the extra boost is usually worth it and your Hemocraft die is just 1d4 for now, the damage you take can't be reduced in any way, and that die will increase as you level. So you'll want to appropriately weigh the risk and reward of whatever curses you might have available. Here's a chart that dictates the size of your Hemocraft die as you level, as well as how many blood curses you can know as a baseline. Some blood curses will also require creatures to make a saving throw against the effect, in which case your Hemocraft save DC will be 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your Hemocraft modifier, which can be intelligence or wisdom. Now, several of these blood curse options aren't available until later levels and are tied to specific subclasses, but let's take a moment to cover each of the base options so you have some ideas for your character's future and flavor. First, we have the Blood Curse of the Anxious, one that I may be afflicted with personally. As a bonus action, you can give yourself advantage on intimidation checks against a creature within 30 feet until the end of your next turn. Amplifying the ability gives the creature disadvantage on its next wisdom saving throw before the curse ends. Although this can be a nice way to navigate social encounters with some badass flavor and there's no saving throw required, I would say it's a little niche, so you might be better off picking something else to start out. Next, the Blood Curse of Binding allows you to, as a bonus action, force a large or smaller creature within 30 feet to make a strength saving throw against having its speed reduced to 0 and stealing their reaction until the end of your next turn. You can boost this to last for 1 minute with no creature size limit, but the target does get to repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns. Technically, this means that the Blood Curse could end up lasting for less time if you amplify it and the creature saves on their first try. It's also important to note that this does not apply the stunned or restrained condition to your enemy, so it might not be as powerful as you think at first glance. The Curse of Bloated Agony uses your bonus action to give a creature within 30 feet disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks and deals them 1d8 necrotic damage if it makes more than one attack per turn. This effect only lasts until the end of your next turn, but it can be amplified to last for a minute, with the creature making a Constitution saving throw at the end of each of its turns to end the curse. I already know how my comments section feels about Constitution saves, but that aside, this is a pretty nice ability, especially early on when an extra 1d8 of damage every round is going to put a dent in any big baddies with multi-attack. The Blood Curse of Exposure removes a creature's resistance to any damage types of an attack they're hit with as a reaction, so long as you can see them and they're within 30 feet. This can also be used to negate invulnerability, turning it into resistance instead, if you choose to amplify the ability, but it only lasts until the end of its next turn. This one's not my favorite. It definitely has its uses, and there's no saving throw involved, but it does eat your reaction, and there are plenty of other ways around resistances and invulnerabilities. Blood Curse of the Eyeless, on the other hand, is one that you'll definitely want to consider. This one allows you to subtract your Hemocraft die from an attack roll another creature makes within 30 feet as a reaction. You'll have to do it before you know if the attack hits or misses, and creatures immune to being blinded can't be affected by this curse, but amplifying it means that all the creature's attack rolls until the end of their next turn are subject to this ability. And if you're shielding yourself or an ally from even one attack, that's sure to be well worth it. The Curse of the Fallen Puppet can be extremely useful in combats with lots of enemies, as it allows you to use your reaction when a creature within 30 feet falls to 0 hit points to force them to make a weapon attack against a target of your choice within its range. Most notably, you can even use this on your own allies in a pinch, or you can even amplify the curse to first force the creature to move up to half its movement speed and give it a bonus to its attack roll equal to your Hemocraft modifier, which is either intelligence or wisdom, remember? This one seems pretty benign at first glance, but you really should consider picking it up, especially at level 1 when characters are often dropping like flies. Blood Curse of the Marked is another option for you at first level, but you actually won't get to use it until you get your Crimson Right feature at 2nd level. This is something to be aware of, since you won't be able to take another Blood Curse option until 6th level. Now, when it does come online at 2nd level, it basically allows you to spend a bonus action and mark a creature in order to deal an extra Hemocraft die in damage until the end of your turn when you hit a creature with a weapon attack with an active Crimson Right. We'll get to that feature in just a moment. But for now, do also know that you can amplify this curse in order to give yourself advantage on the next attack roll you make. Overall, I'm not sure if I'd pick this one up for just an extra die of damage if you hit, especially if it takes a bonus action to activate and may keep you from making a second attack if you're dual wielding. Last, we have the Blood Curse of the Muddled Mind, a great option for dealing with enemy casters. As a bonus action, you can choose a creature within 30 feet that's concentrating and give it disadvantage on the next concentration save it makes before the end of your next turn. You can also double down and give the creature disadvantage on all concentration saves it makes before the end of your next turn if you amplify the curse. It's definitely situational, but undoubtedly clutch against that pesky lich that keeps flinging spells at you and your allies. Finally, after all that, we can move on to level 2, where your Blood Hunter will take on a fighting style, choosing from archery for a +2 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons, dueling for a +2 bonus to damage rolls with melee weapons wielded with one hand while wielding no other weapons, great weapon fighting to reroll 1s and 2s on damage die for attacks with two-handed melee weapons, or 2-weapon fighting to add your ability modifier to the damage of the second attack you make. All of these are pretty standard, but they do a good job of showcasing exactly how combat savvy this class tends to be. What you'll really be interested in here is the Crimson Right feature that we hinted at earlier that allows you to empower your weapons using your Hemocraft abilities as a bonus action. The actual effect depends on the option you choose here, but it boils down to an extra amount of damage equal to your Hemocraft die, which is still a D4 for now, in the form of cold, fire, or lightning damage. Now, when you activate this ability, you'll also take necrotic damage equal to a roll of your Hemocraft die, and just like amplifying your blood curses, there's no way to reduce that damage. However, the right lasts until your next short rest or until you let go of the weapon, so you could conceivably just activate it early in the day without having to burn that bonus action in combat. You can even apply this to multiple weapons as long as you're holding onto them and no weapon has more than one Crimson Rite at a time. 1d4 doesn't seem like much right now, but that die will get bigger and this damage will really start to stack up as you land more attacks, especially given whatever fighting style you may have chosen. Getting that boost twice in a round with 2-weapon fighting can be particularly effective early in the game, and this extra damage can also apply to ranged weapons like longbows or crossbows. This ability gets even better if you pick up feats like Polearm Master or Crossbow Expert that enable you to attack with your bonus action even without using multiple weapons, meaning you get to apply that extra damage more often. That being the case, it wouldn't surprise me to see a Blood Hunter at this point outdamaging most other classes in the game. And that brings us to level 3, where you'll finally get to choose your Blood Hunter subclass. As always, this subclass will have a pretty big effect on how your character plays and the flavor that you're working with, so you'll want to think hard about what you choose, and you may even want to consider your options before this point just so you can build up yourself narratively. Regardless, let's touch on each of them and the features that they offer at 3rd, 7th, 11th, 15th, and 18th levels. First up, we have the Order of the Ghostslayer, a warden bent on fighting the forces of the undead in all their forms. Starting at 3rd level, you gain the option to have your Crimson Rite deal radiant damage as the weapon carrying the Rite sheds bright light out to 20 feet, gives you resistance to necrotic damage, and deals an extra Hemocraft die of damage when used against an undead creature. You'll also gain the ability to use your blood curses on creatures that don't have blood, as well as gain an extra use of the feature. This becomes particularly useful as you realize just how many enemies would have been immune to your curses otherwise. 7th level allows you to slip into the border ethereal plane to walk through objects and creatures for a number of rounds equal to your Hemocraft modifier, which can be a nice option for maneuverability or cheating past obstacles. 11th level sees you deal an extra Hemocraft die of damage to a creature with your Crimson Rite ability so long as you've marked them with a brand of castigation. That same feature we'll be discussing a little later. You'll get a special blood curse at 15th level that can, as a bonus action in the charm condition, frighten condition, or a possession effect on any creature within 30 feet, and if amplified, this curse even deals 3d6 psychic damage and has the chance to stun the creature that charmed, frightened, or possessed the target against a wisdom saving throw. And 18th level gives you the chance to save yourself by ending any active Crimson Rites when you drop to 0 hit points, dropping to 1 hit point instead, which can prove handy in a pinch, but is a bit lackluster for 18th level in my opinion. Overall, this subclass offers some great utility and ghastly flavor alongside some abilities that bolster the base class really well. You can't go wrong with this one, especially if you find yourself up against undead enemies. Then we have the extremely popular Order of the Lycan. As you can imagine, this subclass allows your Blood Hunter to transform into a monstrous version of themselves, fighting against the looming threat of losing control. At 3rd level, you'll gain advantage on perception checks that rely on hearing or smell, and you'll unlock a special bonus action transformation ability that lasts for 1 hour or until you fall unconscious or die. While the feature is available only once per short rest at this point, it allows you to continue using all of your armor and equipment as you gain a plethora of other benefits and drawbacks. You'll have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, a +1 bonus to melee damage rolls that increases to +2 at 11th level and +3 at 18th level, gain resistance to non-magical and non-silvered bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, get a +1 bonus to AC while not wearing heavy armor, and be able to apply your Crimson Rite feature to your unarmed strikes. Optionally use dexterity instead of strength for those unarmed strikes, with a d6 damage die that increases to a d8 at 11th level, and finally make an additional attack as a bonus action when you attack with your action. That's a lot of upside here, so naturally there's a downside as well. If you start your turn without maximum hit points, you must succeed a DC 8 wisdom saving throw or move to the nearest creature, attack them. In truth, you're most often going to be closest to an enemy when you're playing this subclass, but you do have to roll to see who you attack if you're equidistant from multiple creatures. Even with that, I do enjoy the flavor of this, and the downside feels plenty warranted with all the extra bonuses you get at just 3rd level, and it can end up feeling pretty broken as a result. But of course, there's even more to go along with this, as 7th level increases your speed by 10 feet, adds 10 feet to your long jump distance, and adds 3 feet to your high jump distance, all while in your base form, while your transformation gives you a +1 bonus to attack rolls with your unarmed strikes, with this increasing to a +2 at 11th level and a +3 at 18th level, and your unarmed strikes become magical if they use your Crimson Right feature. Even though the base Crimson Right feature implies that the attacks would already have been magical from the start, so thanks for upping the word count, I guess? Then 11th level allows you to transform twice per short rest instead of just once, and grants you an added benefit when transformed that heals you for 1 plus your Constitution modifier in hit points at the start of each turn when you have less than half your hit points but aren't at 0. What a nice ability for a tank to have. 15th level gives you advantage on your wisdom saving throws to maintain control and grants you advantage on attack rolls against a creature marked by your brand of castigation, which I promise we will cover soon. And finally, at 18th level, you can transform an unlimited number of times, and you gain a special blood curse that forces creatures of your choice within 30 feet to make a wisdom save against being frightened of you until the end of your next turn, becoming stunned if they fail the save by 5 or more. Although creatures that make the save become immune to this curse for 24 hours, you can even amplify it to increase the range to a whopping 60 feet, making this one of my favorites, even if you do get it pretty late. It should be easy to see why this subclass is so popular. It ticks a lot of flavor fantasy boxes and doesn't limit you to being just a werewolf if you'd like to be something like a were-narwhal instead. And the subclass itself offers a lot of upside potential for a melee combat build, and the massive boost you get right at level 3 hinges on godly. Next, we arrive at the Order of the Mutant, a subclass built upon expedient evolution and body modification through the use of specific elixirs called mutagens. And you'll get access to these formulas right away at 3rd level when, as a bonus action, you can choose to consume a mutagen for effects and side effects that last until you finish a short rest. You can also use an action to get rid of these effects immediately if you so choose, and we'll get to why you may want to in just a moment. For now, here's a chart that shows how many formulas you may know and how many mutagens you can create per short rest. Before you get any ideas, these mutagens do only work for you and become completely ineffective once you finish a short rest, so no stockpiling. Although you can place yourself under multiple mutagen effects at once by consuming more than one of them, but you may want to be careful about that. There are 20 options for you to choose from that, as we covered before, each come with positive and negative effects. Let's take a look at each so you don't end up mixing the wrong batches. The Aether mutagen isn't available until 11th level, but offers you a flying speed of 20 feet for 1 hour in exchange for disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks. The Alluring mutagen grants you advantage on charisma checks, but disadvantage on initiative rolls. Celerity increases your dexterity score by 3 at 1st, 4 at 11th level, and 5 at 18th level, even allowing you to exceed your maximum score, but then you have to deal with disadvantage on wisdom saving throws. Conversant grants advantage on intelligence checks, but disadvantage on wisdom checks. The Cruelty mutagen is available starting at level 11 and allows you to take a bonus action attack when you take the attack action in exchange for disadvantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Deafness gives you advantage on dexterity checks, but disadvantage on wisdom checks. Embers affords you resistance to fire damage, but vulnerability to cold damage. Gelid gives you resistance to cold damage, but vulnerability to fire damage. Impermeable grants you resistance to piercing damage, but vulnerability to slashing damage. The mobility formula gives you immunity to the grappled and restrained conditions in exchange for disadvantage on strength checks, but also makes you immune to the paralyzed condition at 11th level. Night Eye awards you dark vision out to 60 feet, adding an extra 60 feet if you already have dark vision. However, you'll also get disadvantage on attack rolls and perception checks when in direct sunlight. Percipient affords you advantage on wisdom checks and disadvantage on charisma checks. Potency increases your strength score above the maximum, similar to Celerity, but also gives you disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. Rapidity increases your speed by 10 feet or 15 feet at 15th level, but forces disadvantage on intelligence checks. Reconstruction isn't available until 7th level, but heals you by your proficiency bonus at the start of each turn for 1 hour, so long as you have at least 1 hit point and less than half of your maximum, but it also reduces your speed by 10 feet, an exchange that's certainly worth it in my opinion. Sagacity increases your intelligence above your maximum like potency and celerity does, but forces disadvantage on charisma saving throws. Shielded gives you resistance to slashing damage and vulnerability to bludgeoning damage. Unbreakable gives you resistance to bludgeoning damage, but vulnerability to piercing. And Vermilion grants you an additional use of your Blood Maledict feature in exchange for disadvantage on death saving throws. Once you've carefully powered yourself up, at level 7 you become immune to the poison condition and can forcibly ignore the negative side effects of a single mutagen for 1 minute as a bonus action. At 11th level, you're able to mark a creature and negate any invisibility or illusion effect on it, as in the case of Wild Shape or Polymorph, against a Wisdom saving throw that can leave them stunned. 15th level grants you the Blood Curse of Corrosion that, as a bonus action, can poison a creature within 30 feet of you. The creature can then only escape the poison if they succeed a Constitution save at the end of each of its turns, but you can also amplify the curse so the creature takes a sizable 4d6 necrotic damage when they become poisoned and every time they fail the subsequent save. Then at 18th level, Mutant Blood Hunters can, as a bonus action, swap out a mutagen currently affecting them for another formula they know a number of times equal to your Hemocraft modifier. As is the case with most of the Blood Hunter rules, this subclass is a massive word salad. I do love that you get to pick and choose the right boost for your character given whatever you're facing off against, and that there are a few really incredible mutagens to choose from. But a lot of them fall flat, like a flying speed as late as 11th level, a crummy dark vision that penalizes you in the sunlight, and even damage resistances that leave you wide open to another type. I get what this subclass is trying to do, but maybe sometimes these mutagens should just do the boosting without the penalizing, since other subclasses already get resistance to multiple damage types for free. Still, it's definitely worth playing around with if you want to raise your stats through the roof or take advantage of the auto-healing feature. And that brings us to the Order of the Profane Soul. For those of you hoping to lean more into that warlocky flavor that the Blood Hunter borrows in the base class. These individuals do literally make a deal with a warlock patron right at 3rd level, unlocking pact magic as you select your patron out of Archfey, the Undying, Celestial, Fathomless, Genie, Great Old One, Hexblade, and Undead. Each of these options will offer specific boosts now and as you level, so you may want to look before you leap, and you may even want to have a look at my Warlock guide if you're interested in more of the specific flavor of all these options. As for your spellcasting, your character will become something of a half-caster Warlock, and you'll learn 2 cantrips from the Warlock spell list, along with 2 first-level Warlock spells, for which you can use your weapon as a spellcasting focus. As you can see, just as a Warlock is known for, you won't gain a large number of spells or spell slots, but it's worth noting that you will regain any used spell slots when you finish a short rest. Your spell attack modifier for these spells will be your proficiency bonus plus your Hemocraft modifier, and your spell save DC will be that plus 8. And even with all that, we aren't even close to done with 3rd level, because depending on your selection of Warlock patron, your abilities can differ wildly here. So let's touch on what each has to offer. The Archfey negates invisibility by forcing creatures to glow when you hit them with a Crimson Rite weapon attack, with a pretty niche feature. The Celestial heals a creature within 60 feet by your Hemocraft die plus your Hemocraft modifier as a bonus action that spends one of your Blood Maledict uses, which burns quite a few resources for not that much healing. The Fathomless allows you to breathe underwater and reduce a creature's speed by 10 feet once per turn when you hit it with a Crimson Rite weapon attack. The Fiend sees you reroll 1s and 2s on damage dice when you roll extra damage corresponding to the Crimson Rite of Flame. The Genie expends a use of your Blood Maledict feature as a bonus action to grant a 30-foot flying speed. The Great Old One frightens a creature and any other creature of your choice within 10 feet anytime you land a critical hit with no saving throw, which can completely debilitate an encounter if you manage a crit. The Hexblade deals extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus the first time you hit a creature under the effect of one of your blood curses. The Undead allows you to take half necrotic damage as a reaction, and the Undying heals you by a roll of your Hemocraft die whenever you reduce a creature your DM deems a mild threat down to 0 hit points. Definitely a great ability, but leaves the interpretation up to your DM. At 7th level, all of these options will allow you to make a weapon attack as a bonus action when you use your action to cast a cantrip, which does work with options like Booming Blade, by the way, before granting you yet another patron-specific boon that allows you to cast 1 spell per long rest without using a spell slot. Archfey gives you Blur, Celestial, Lesser Restoration, Fathomless, Gust of Wind, Fiend, Scorching Ray, Genie, Phantasmal Force, Great Old One, Detect Thoughts, Hexblade, Branding Smite, Undead, Blindness, Deafness, and Undying, Silence. Then at 11th level, your Brand of Castigation feature gives a creature disadvantage on saving throws against your Warlock spells, and 15th level gives yet another single-use spell per long rest. Archfey gives Slow, Celestial, Revivify, Fathomless, Lightning Bolt, Fiend, Fireball, Genie, Protection from Energy, Great Old One, Haste, Hexblade, Blink, Undead, Speak with Dead, and Undying Bestow Curse. And of course, you'll gain a Hallmark Blood Curse at 18th level that affords you advantage on all attacks and resistance to all damage until the end of your next turn as a reaction when a creature is reduced to 0 hit points within 30 feet of you. As if that wasn't enough, you can also amplify this ability to regain a Warlock spell slot, though you can't amplify this again until you complete a long rest. This is a pretty good Blood Curse, and one that I use fairly often even without the extra amplification ability. The subclass overall offers a lot by affording your mostly martial character access to spells like Hex and Spirit Shroud, though notably having access to even less spell slots than a typical Warlock could be a problem for anyone at a table running more than a couple combats in between short rests. Even then, you aren't entirely helpless, and the patrons offer mostly decent extra spells, though I'm most partial to options like the Archfey and the Great Old One that offer spell selections in later levels that give you some extra oomph in combat over multiple rounds instead of just a single low-level fireball or a utility spell that might rarely come up. Either way, the flavor here is on point, and the mechanics certainly add a boost in power to the base Blood Hunter class. So you definitely won't regret striking a deal with your favorite big bad sugar daddy. And now we can finally move on to level 4, where your Blood Hunter will get their first ability score improvement or feat, just as you will later at 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th level. 5th level grants us an extra attack when we take the attack action on our turn. Then at level 6, you can use Blood Curses twice per short rest, and you can make a Brand of Castigation onto a creature when you damage them with a Crimson Rite weapon attack. And always know the direction to that creature so long as it's on the same plane. The creature will also take psychic damage equal to your Hemocraft modifier anytime it deals damage to you or a creature within 5 feet of you. This mark can only be applied to one creature at a time, it can be dispelled by Dispel Magic, and you can only use it once per short rest, but it can offer quite a bit of extra damage if you're fighting a combat with one specifically strong enemy that likes to use multi-attack. See, I told you we'd finally get to it. At 7th level, you can choose an additional Crimson Rite option out of Fire, Cold, or Lightning damage. 9th level gives you advantage on specific history checks involving the grim past of objects or locations for a feature that can certainly offer some cool narrative flavor in your adventures, but likely not much else. 10th level sees your speed increase by 5 feet and adds a bonus to Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution saving throws equal to your Hemocraft modifier, which should be a +4 or +5 at this point. Then starting at 13th level, you can use your Blood Curses 3 times per short rest, and the psychic damage you deal with your Brand of Castigation increases to twice your Hemocraft modifier, while also keeping marked creatures from taking the dash action. The creature will even take 4d6 psychic damage if it attempts to leave the current plane by any means, and may fail in doing so if it fails a Wisdom saving throw. This ability is pretty fantastic and could see you dealing something like an extra 30 psychic damage against creatures every round if they attack you or allies near you with multiple strikes, and that total could easily soar to as much as 60 or 70 damage if they've got legendary actions too. Look, I've seen some point out that this damage doesn't come close to offsetting whatever damage your enemy is doing with all those attacks they land. But wouldn't you rather do damage if you're getting hit anyway? Moving on to 14th level, you'll get yet another chance to choose an extra damage type for your Crimson Rite. But this time you can choose from Fire, Cold, Lightning, Necrotic, Psychic, or Thunder. And you're probably going to want to choose Psychic since it's not often resisted. You'll also gain advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened before moving on to level 17, where you'll be able to use Blood Curses 4 times per short rest. And then finally, we arrive at level 20. Here, your blood boils and your fury reaches a fever pitch as you can re-roll a Hemocraft die once per turn and use either roll. And you'll regain a Blood Maledict feature anytime you land a crit with a Crimson Rite weapon attack. Honestly, I expected a bit more than that from Matt Mercer's broken Blood Hunter, but I'm actually kinda glad for it. Let me explain why. The plethora of other Blood Hunter features and options offer a ton of flexibility for us to build just about any character we might imagine. While it's true that this class certainly leans towards a frontline attacker, you can just as easily create a Blood Hunter that makes use of ranged attacks with their Crimson Rite and Blood Maledicts. Knowing that not much is waiting for us at level 20, we have a pretty good motivation for multi-classing into Fighter and picking up Action Surge for more damage output, or even Barbarian for more staying power and rage. Hell, you can easily multi-class into just about anything that isn't charisma based and end up with something extremely strong thanks to the flexibility of this class's key stats. However, all this flexibility does come at a cost. If you're a new player or someone that prefers not to read a massive word salad every time you level up, you may want to try a different class. I can appreciate how much love and care has gone into the Blood Hunter, but I can't help but feel like a lot of this could have been less. Why do we need a whole new Hemocraft die to keep track of instead of just taking our proficiency bonus in damage to activate and amplify abilities? Do we really need 20 different mutagens in a subclass when we've already established that most of them aren't nearly as good as other features? And why did we need more detail about getting visions from a ribbon feature at 9th level when a DM would reasonably arrive at that conclusion anyway? Maybe you've got some answers for me, and if so, I'd love to hear your opinions down in the comments. While you're there, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more guides like this one. Now, until next time, go out there and make some chaos.